Today I'm going to be doing a flip through of Creating Textures in Colored Pencil by Gary Greene, with an emphasis on looking at how this book will benefit those of us who are coloring book artists. This book was written in 1996, and I don't want you to get scared off by art books that have been written maybe 20, 30 years ago. It's not to say that the medium hasn't changed since then. In fact, what you'll find in a lot of these colored pencil art books is that they talk about it being a new medium. And that's interesting to us because it doesn't seem like it's new, but at the time that this book was being written and other books of its kind were being written, colored pencils were not considered to be an artistic medium. In fact, they were probably looked down upon. But there were pioneers in this movement of colored pencil that have gotten us to where we are today, to where anybody can use colored pencils. So as we go through this book, the first thing that has struck me is the first line in his artist statement. And it says, "Art is to me the very essence of life." Because of my main interest in art, namely graphic art, photography, and fine art, few moments go by that I'm not thinking art. And he talks about once or maybe twice, maybe a lot of times, he's asked, what are you going to do after you're done doing colored pencil art? And his reply is, I'm never going to stop doing colored pencil art. And I think that's something that we can all be inspired by, to think about the fact that we do something that we love so much that we will never stop doing that. And in fact, there's no reason for us to stop. Why should we let age or anything else keep us from doing something like this that we love? But art is to me the very essence of life as well. And I did a recent video where I talk about this very thing and how it changed my thinking, because I now look at art being life. And I'm just going to flip through this as I talk, and life being art. And there is a way for us to live artfully. Here in the introduction, he goes through a little bit about how he discovered the medium. And you'll see he looked back to a day in 1983 when somebody was getting together a colored pencil society of America. And this person, Miss Kernow, I believe she's got an art book as well, which we will look at, contacted him, and he was one of the founding members then in this particular society. So where we are today in 2022, we can thank these people. As you can see with this beautiful rendering, you would not know that this was colored pencil. So as with all art books, he goes through the colored pencil comparisons so that you can get an idea when you buy a colored pencil if it's going to be oil-based, wax, hard wax, soft wax, or water soluble. And there are many different products out there on the market. Here he talks about erasers and the different type of erasers that are available to us. And this page I had marked because it was very interesting. Not too long ago, I did a video on watercolor, how to use watercolor pencils. And one of the things that I used was a watercolor ground, and you might want to take a look at that video. I'll give you a link of that in the description. But what you can see here is that the watercolor ground actually changes the texture of the paper that you're working with. And I wish I had known that before I used it, because I was really unhappy with the way that the coloring page turned out, because the watercolor ground made the page, instead of smooth, it made it very scratchy. And I should have made some compensations for that. But going forward, just so you know, that different papers will affect the way that you color and how that you color. Here he talks about solvents, other tools and materials, other things you might like. The reason that you would need a hair dryer is to dry when you're using watercolor pencils, if you want to dry that so it dries quicker. And you need a brush because when you're doing your coloring, if you want to get some of that material off your paper, you can brush that right off. This is a tool that is very interesting here. What he's calling this is an erasing shield that you could use on a coloring page. And if you wanted to take a very small strip and color it darkly, but you only want a very thin strip, you'd use something like this. And this picture is so gorgeous. Again, his work is so beautiful. I would not know that he's using colored pencils. These are a few samples of his work. Here he's talking about how to use your reference art. And right here I thought was an important point to keep in mind for the coloring book artist, and that is that when he talks about when you are doing a painting such as watercolor, oil, acrylic, you are actually mixing the paint. Generally, if you want a specific color, you don't put a dab of red, a dab of blue on top of the canvas. You do that on something else. And so you're mixing the color that you want elsewhere. But in colored pencils, you're actually applying your colors on the surface of the paper that you're using. And so what he's suggesting is that you test out, you pick your colors ahead of time, and you test them out, how they're going to layer and so forth. Now, there are many times that this would have come in handy for myself, such as when I am coloring a mandala. I will start off with certain colors and then I add just that one wrong color, and I feel like it ruins the color composition that I was trying to go for. So I definitely suggest picking out your colors in advance, testing them out on a 3x5 card. That's what I keep handy every time I color. This is about layout and techniques, and this is about layering. This is burnishing, and burnishing is a very fancy term. If you can see here, there's a lot of white inside this, and you continually burnish, and you use a very heavy hand when you're in the end of your burnishing, because you're not going to be adding any more layers, and it just eliminates all the little white flecks. This is underpainting, colorless markers, linear strokes, which I did try. I'm going to also link another video. I took this book and I picked out 4 different pictures to test out the skills to see if I could do what he was showing here. And I loved the look of the linear strokes here. I'll link that video that I did for you when I did the practicing. And my main question was in that video, does practicing skills help you as a coloring book artist? Do we need to practice skills, or do we just need to sit down and color? And this was one of the samples that I used here, this flower. And basically what I found is that he uses, in order to get the look that he's going for, he does use a lot of solvents, which I don't really think is practical for the coloring book artist. We don't always get the strength in the paper quality that is needed for this. He is using a different type of paper that can handle water, it can handle the solvents, but I find when I use the solvents on the coloring books that it's just not needed. So I do find that some of the techniques in here are really not duplicatable for those of us that are doing coloring book art. And we've got several examples of flowers here. This is another one that I chose because even though I didn't have a lilac, or he calls it hyacinth, I didn't have the hyacinth in my coloring page. I had other flowers. But I feel like the technique where we start with he's actually got black in here, and the darker purple, and then lightening out around the edges, and then in using burnishing techniques. I feel like those are the type of techniques that can help us as coloring book artists. Are we going to wash it with the rubber cement? No. I tried another form of a solvent, and you can watch the video and see how that turned out. This is another concept that I liked trying. And then much of the rest of the book here is examples of fruits, vegetables, flowers, and then we're going to, this example of a leaf I feel is very good. We have lots of leaves in our coloring book pages. It's just that I don't feel in this particular book he has given us enough information to get the look that he has here. He does give us a list of colors of the colored pencils. If you don't use the same brand that he is using, then you have to choose the colors that make the closest match or the look that you're going for. But there are a few more steps. He's got it in here just as one step: layer, solvent, then another color, solvent, and then burnish, and so forth. But as I was practicing, I found like I needed a little bit more steps than what this book showed. There's a lot of cactuses, a lot of fir and palms in coloring books. This is bark. We have a need to understand, and maybe we won't duplicate these exact skills, but it does give us a rough idea on how we start out right here, and then through burnishing and different techniques what we can achieve. Wood finishes, and look what he's done here with that. We've got rocks, rough water, calm water, water drops, and then we move into some people. Coloring hair, how the hair begins. Cats and dogs, other animals, and as you can see, it's almost like for the medium of colored pencils, the sky is the limit. This is a beautiful study on watercolors. In fact, I meant a beautiful study on colored pencils, not watercolors. Balloons, blue jeans. This basket would be something that I can see needing to use in the future. He had some contributing artists that showed some of their work in there as well. All in all, I feel like this is a great book to look through and to get a few ideas for the coloring book artist. I feel like you can maybe not duplicate exactly some of these because we're not using the solvents, but we can sure try some of the techniques and develop some of our own technique that we feel will better the art that we are doing.